so I read Disrupt You by J. Samit. Ladies and gentlemen, oh my god, this book is great, but I might lose you, because it is a businessy / master personal transformation, all these things. It's a very good book. It's very much a self-help book, but it's also tied to generating and capturing value, is a good way the book puts it. In this video, I will be doing my best to just talk your ass off about this wonderful book and a lot of the cool ideas within this book. Fun fact, I actually was not planning on reading this book first. He has another book that to me was too interesting not to be interested in. But essentially, this person, by the way, J. Samit, is I think well beyond a millionaire at this point. Regardless, he's just a businessman and a person who has been a part of stimulating a lot of businesses and his kind of takeaways on how to do that. Anyways, the thing that got me interested in this in the first place was he has a book out, I think in the last year, which was essentially he took a person that was homeless and within I think a year and a half's time made him a millionaire, because his whole belief was that anybody with enough knowledge or just the right understanding of how to I think it's consolidate a business, like piece together the parts of what would make a business and what would capture value and what would create value and etc. Just knowing that process and sticking to it can of course lead you down a path of eventually hitting the mark and eventually flourishing. That's what I think the book is. I haven't read that book, but that's what got me interested in the idea of like, okay, wait, this guy took a homeless person and made them a millionaire within, I think, a year's time. That's interesting. Even if it's all fluff, it's still interesting. And after reading this book, I don't think it is. Now, I don't want to, let's not jump the gun yet. This guy's not your savior. He's not your, just ground him. He's a human being. All those things. But what this book is, ladies and gentlemen, for people who are maybe interested in wanting to read it, if I could kind of give you a quick pitch of what it is and what I got out of it, this is a self-improvement book for those who want to create and capture value. And it's funny, because that's not what the name of the book is. The name of the book is called Disrupt You, because what disruption means, specifically in the context of this book, is that over the course of many years and within businesses, within technologies, within whatever, there's been innovations. But what determines an innovation's like metric or scale is disruption for this in this book. Or at least that's the way I kind of perceive it. So this person, Samit, probably not even saying that right. Forgive me. That's why I don't say the names, because I'm worried I'm going to ruin them. An easy way he puts it is disruption is when innovation goes really, really far and kind of reshapes a landscape of a business, of an industry, of whatever. So a good, to me, the best example of this is the internet. The internet wasn't just an innovation, wasn't just an improvement, it completely disrupted the entire landscape of media, of searching things, of knowledge, of everything. So it completely uphinged everything. And then he also points out that you can disrupt stuff on a smaller scale, such as one of his examples, which he actually had a part in, is he was a music producer, he was like the head of a huge music company, and their main financial pull was essentially album sales. But then Apple came along and started selling individual songs, which kind of upended their whole model of sales. Disrupting, aka destroying, not destroying. He makes a good point. Disruption isn't just destroying an industry, it's destroying and birthing a lot of opportunity. So it's like, say, yes, a business failed, or yes, a business goes out of business, but that's only because there was a better way to achieve the outcomes, or there was a better way to serve, or there was a better way of providing greater value through evolution of technology and things like that. So essentially, disruption is just when innovation goes really, really far and somebody perfectly brings it to market, therefore causing a lot of damage, but at the same time causing a lot of opportunity. Does that make sense? Hope it does. Anyways, so as I do, because I'm a psychopath, I made a lot of notes on every single chapter. So how I learn things, this is just a quick, talk about me and how I do things. Basically, I basically, with my weird nonsense, dyslexic, freakish mind, how I learn things really well is I listen to an audio podcast, and then I sit with a Word doc in front of me, and then I type down things in my own words that they say that I think is pretty relevant or pretty valuable or connects to the system so that I can greatly understand all of the process. So that's what the book is. I would highly suggest you guys go read it if that interests you in the slightest. It is very business focused. It kind of goes through the processes of, yes, self-improvement, but also the process of disruption and how you can disrupt your own person, how you can like deconstruct who you are and rebuild yourself and reassemble yourself to be the person that actually can succeed in the thing that you're trying to succeed in. It also there's plenty of value here in terms of like understanding the value proposition within things. Also, one of the best ways I think I learn is by hearing people recount stories of what other people did and then extrapolating on all of the value within that story. And this book has a lot of it. If you've ever read a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's a very similar thing. Lots of stories about how people did what they did, why they did what they did, and the outcomes of what they did. And the kind of takeaways, as well as your own extrapolated takeaways if you wanted to infer from the story as well. Regardless, let's get into this. We have so many chapters to kind of talk about. So basically, I'm going to go through all of my notes and point out the ones that I think are like really, really cool. And again, this is all kind of just going to be like, if any of these resonate, there's more. So read the other ones. Also, quick TLDR, the reason why I looked into these kinds of books is because I've been doing YouTube for probably 10 years. No, 8 years. No, maybe 9. 8 years. Let's just say 8. 8 years, and I wanted to attack it from a different point of view, I guess, and try to really improve and make this work. Whatever that means, which would, I think, yeah, but that's why I'm starting to read these books, and I'm finding they're very helpful, and maybe you find them even slightly interesting. But let's get into it. Okay, so the first chapter kind of talks about what he's going to be talking about for the rest of the book, which is this idea of disruption. We kind of already explained it, but essentially it's the idea of when there's an innovation that takes place to the point in which it destabilizes the current environment. This can be a business, this can be a whatever. Again, like one of the things is when the internet massively disrupted music sales because you could just download free music. So it kind of upended the monetary money being funneled into albums and songs when the internet came into being. And he kind of talks about, okay, there were people that were trying to like nullify this, or like trying to kill music or kill the internet, essentially, because they were seeing how easy it would be able for people to download things and acquire media. But then there were other people who said, well, wait, how can we facilitate this? How can we capture the value being generated by people going about this? And those people were the ones to be the better, and that's kind of the whole position of the book is, you want to be the person that is capturing value from a disruption or even creating disruption rather than the person just getting his ass beat by it. To kind of look at the world and look at every challenge as an opportunity rather than your potential demise, yeah? So that's the kind of the idea. So the chapter basically just points at that in defense of disruption, it generates a lot of opportunity, but there's no doubt that it destroys businesses and whatnot. But it's also on you that you didn't pivot, adapt with the current time, with what is in the most need for you, working with the disruption rather than fighting tooth and nail against it. Because, and this is his whole thing, true disruption is almost unstoppable. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. For instance, the internet. It's something that you just kind of have to be like, okay, we're doing this now. Okay, where's the other way in which my business can capture value? Also, I heard things in this book that I loved, which is like apparently a coding term, which is KISS, but it's an abbreviation for Keep It Simple, Stupid. And what he's referring to it within this is kind of what like, okay, well, now that we know what disruption is, how do we like capture it or do it? How do we disrupt a system? How do we break into a system and actually generate more value and all that stuff? And again, he basically just says a lot of you, if you just break down what disruption would be, aka the internet to the whole world, to the music industry, to the film industry, for whatever, it's somebody providing a need to a market that is desperately in need of something. So again, there's plenty of people who didn't have the money to buy music, who desperately wanted the music, who would maybe have to work their ass off as like at a convenience store in order to pay for the song. Whereas now there's an easier option for them just to download a pirated version of them. Every now and again you get meat spin, unlucky. Anyways, but then you'd be able to be actually able to listen to the song or something like that. So it's when you bring a piece of technology or you give something to the market that is in need. And of course, you can see that within everything. It doesn't have to be like, the internet. It could be literally like if it's Twitch, it's bringing community connection whilst we, consolidate around a singular idea, video game, topic, or whatever. So that's a need that was desperately wanted and sought out, and of course, that was captured by Twitch and even in some cases YouTube. So one of the things he says is define yourself as a disruptor. Constantly look for ways to apply technology advancements to revolutionize how we work, think, and play. And then he also says this, which I really liked, which is, so this is like, in fear of disruption, security robs ambition. Remember that out of all of the big companies that existed many years ago, almost all of them are gone. Only 14 companies remain and have lasted over 40 years. This point is to not be fooled into thinking that you are somehow safe and secure from disruption. Security does not rob ambition. The illusion of security robs ambition, which I thought was really cool. I thought that was an interesting perspective, because it's like, especially within the last 2 years, we're just like, oh yeah, like, absolutely, there's no certainty within what you should bet on. So, and I've always liked this idea of, I'll give you a fish, it's like, great, but I would rather know how you got the fish in the first place, so that even if I would know how much work I have to put in to get more fish, and if there's a better way to get a more fish. But yeah, so that to me is the same thing. Is like, I would rather be like, would you rather be the person that has really thick skin, or the person that's basically Wolverine and can repair themselves whenever they take damage? And then all they would need to do is just take a respite, and then they'd be able to come back right as rain. Because if you have a lot of armor and something eventually gets through, you're just gonna bleed out and die. Like you're just a meat sack in a tin can. Okay, so now we're on to chapter 2, become a disruptor. Disrupting isn't about what happened to you, it's about how you respond to what happened to you. To see massive problems as massive opportunities. So this is something that I want to extrapolate on, because I think it's really interesting, but it's kind of the idea of value and ideas, and things that are worth pursuing almost. So one of the things in this is to see, it's kind of like a good way if you ever struggled with coming up with ideas, which as a person who creates content every single day, mostly, I no longer hold myself to always have to upload every day, but I still do it, fuck me. Anyway, but I do stream every day, and I do try to bring you guys some sort of value content to cover that's interesting, engaging, or something. I don't always hit the mark, but I try. But the idea still stands that if you're going to be in a position where you're going to be trying to constantly capture value or capture ideas or interest or something within your audience, people, or whatever, then you're going to need to have multiple threads to pull on. And one of the threads he talks about is you should look for like if you're experiencing a problem, and I felt this personally, one of the biggest successes I've had on my channel, which is Let It Die, was I was playing a video game and I thought, holy shit, is this game hard. This game is hard, but also I think there's ways to make it incredibly easy. If you just knew what to do. If you did this, did that, you went here, did that, boom, you'd be able to progress. And then I was like, well, hey, no one's really playing this game right now, but eventually if somebody does play it, then they'll need help, and I have the answer, so screw it, I'll make a video trying to give them those answers. So then I did, and then of course that succeeded for me. So again, the idea is to look at like your problems that you're experiencing, that you're facing every day, and I would also extend that to be empathetic and listen to what other people's problems are, and understand those deeply, and try to figure out how to solve all those problems, to find the quote-unquote silver lining or opportunity in those things, because those are basically great value propositions / a good place to capture and create value. That's something we're going to keep saying, because I think that's one of the coolest takeaways to this book. Anyways. Okay, so this is, again, a lot of times we're reading this chapter and then we'll start saying stuff that's like really off course, but actually like it's the thing that makes this a self-mastery book, I think. Disrupt yourself kind of thing. And this is something that I just feel like really rings true. The unfortunate reality of what holds people back is their own beliefs that they are not good enough or deserving enough to be successful. You get what you believe you deserve. We become what we believe we are. Now, again, I know when people hear we become what we believe, I know people get the Oprah weird thing, and they're like, stop it. Well, I can't just think and become something. But he does make a really good point, I think, and I've felt this personally, where if you do not feel you even can succeed, then your brain, then you will not even try, basically. You know, if you're like, you'll be, and this is something that I think comes from a book that I love to pieces, and I think it's probably the one that I've associated the most with my happiness and success and anything like that, but it's with Winning in Mind by Lenny Basum. The idea is, if you can't even believe that you are capable of success, you won't even try. You'll be failing. You'll be basically training to fail and not training to win. So you have to, at least, even if it's blasphemous, it's absolutely you can't even imagine you're capable of doing it. You need to start imagining you're capable of doing it, or else you'll never actually make a stride in the direction that you can. And that the whole book, not this one, the with Winning in Mind, goes through the incredible importance of people who did things that are incredible. Like this guy was an Olympic rifle shooter who taught a ton of people and got a shit ton of gold medals himself in rifle shooting, which is a mental sport, not very physical. Anyways, it just extrapolates on the importance of your mindset, and you even just having these slight belief in the fact that you can do something. And the one that I still struggle with, because it really digs into my principles that I believe, which is what you believe you deserve. I'm a person who sees a wonderful kid who's got brain cancer and things. The world doesn't. You don't deserve shit. You're gifted a lot of shit. There's someone who always has a worse deck, so the deserve clashes with my principle. But I think, again, if I were to bet on someone who believes that they deserve nothing, or a person who believes that they deserve something, I think the person that believes that they deserve something, that believes that they have a right to claim something, that will at least reach out and try to grab something, will be the person that gets something. Whereas the person that kind of waits for things to be thrust upon them or gifted onto them or whatever, is probably the person that won't, or at the very least have a harder time getting to that place or succeeding. Which, as much as it clashes with my principle, I agree with it. You should believe that you deserve something, although maybe in the very, very deep parts of your soul realize, you don't really deserve anything, but you should absolutely reach for whatever you can, because everyone else is probably going to do the same, or at least you'd hope that they would. This is also a really cool thing when he talks about generating ideas or value or to disrupt, which is basically those things to some extent, just with different scaling. But he talks about a lot of people mess up when they're trying to attain their goals by basically being like, oh my god, how do I even get there? How do I even become a med student? Or how do I even become, how do I have my own business? How do I become a world-class athlete in basketball? So people have this weird perception of looking upwards at a mountain of stairs and being like, holy shit, this is impossible. Whereas he says, and I agree with this, start with where you want to be. So envision yourself, or consider that you are now the best version of the basketball player that you want to be, or you have your own business, everything is working, you're getting a solid income, you're stabilized, all of these things, and then work backwards, back down to be okay, well, if I wanted to be a good basketball player, I would need to specify into having a leverage point of value that would be determined by the activity. It's a really complicated way of saying it, but basically you would need to pick something, dribbling, shooting, something, and become really good at it. Okay, then how would you go about becoming good at that? I could look into information of people who are good. I could find ways to train every single day that would help me become good, and I could hold myself to doing those every single day. I could also eventually get enough capital to learn, to understand, and maybe hire specialized help to get me even better at what I needed to be. And I could try to think of the problem from a pulled back perspective to understand, okay, what is the most value that could be captured from a skill, rather than just genetic capability like height or athleticism. A great example of this to me is oh my god, I'm the worst. I'm so sorry. I'm so bad with names. It's like the dyslexia nonsense. But this person, Steph Curry, them. Okay, so he basically shot a basketball better than everyone thought it was possible. Basically, so instead of dribbling, instead of getting up to the he just started draining threes all the time and got really good at that. And that was his gateway into it, despite he didn't have all of the other genetic advantages potentially that other people had. So anyways, but just the idea of whatever you want, start at what you want and reverse your way backwards. Say, okay, I would need to get to this point, and then I would need to get to this point, and then I would need to attain this, or I need to acquire skills in this department. Okay, so now you start saying, okay, now I just need to go here, 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 and then maybe along the line you're like, okay, no, this is going to take way more time, but at least you know you're starting from a place of capability and access, and like you feeling like you can actually attain your goal, rather than at a place where you're like, it's too much, I can't, where do I even start? Ugh. That becomes bad. Another great quote, the same successful people have the same 24 hours in the day. Don't make excuses. Yes. But at the same time, I think, and this is my own, principles, but say if somebody had better, because then the counter to that is, well, what if someone had more opportunity than you? What if somebody had better advantages than you? To me, maybe it's just me being born with a weird setback type thing. I don't care what kind of advantage you had. Doesn't change the fact that I got to climb up the same hill. So I best find a better way to climb it up, more efficient, more strategic, my own advantage, anything. It's about getting up the hill, not about complaining about other people having gotten an easy ride up the hill, I guess. Anyways, sorry, that's just the principle in my brain. Anyways, I do empathize with people who had to work way harder, but I think it doesn't change the fact that we all need to work hard, so just work hard, I guess. Okay, so this is something he talks about. I didn't expect he would talk about this early on, but he talks about, this is where the self-improvement stuff goes on, and this is kind of, he talks about it in the next chapter. But anyways, he basically says that one of the biggest things that you are going to need to do if you are going to want to disrupt or just attain your goals, achieve value creation, and of course capturing, you are going to need to disrupt yourself, which again is the whole point of disrupt you. In order to become a disruptor, you also should look into how to disrupt and break the internal value chain of yourself. So this is something really interesting in terms of, like, if there's any takeaway that I think you should take from the book, this is definitely one of them. So he breaks down any process or anything within yourself in this example. Well, let's explain this in a way that makes, I think, more sense on the surface level. So he oftentimes says in the book, you need to deconstruct or break down an internal value chain. A good way to think about this to me is the process to execute anything or the process to provide value in whatever. Break it down into a process. So step one, for me, it was like YouTube videos. Step one would be, research and development essentially, which would be, okay, I need to find out what people want, what people are looking for, and see if I can find an answer that is the best answer for that solution. Cool. So now I've researched that. Now I need to actually produce that content / create it. So I need to edit it. I need to get footage of it. I need to perform and hopefully not be the worst on trying to persuade that information. And along the way, if I could make people chuckle and laugh, then good, I'll do that as well. And then the next thing is basically kind of like marketing and distribution a little bit, which is like metadata tags. Can the person that I made the video for find it? How can I avoid showing up in people who don't want the videos things so they don't engage with it negatively? Those kinds of things. What can I do to make the video more enjoyable and more seamless and add even more value to it? And then of course the distribution. Can I put this in a place where people will see it, where people who need it will get it, and things like that. So you break things down into a process. So 1, 2, 3 links of a chain, aka a value chain. So his whole thing is with disruption being the counterpoint of how can you break this link and capture or create even more value. Usually create and capture is how it works. So you look at a business, you look at yourself. This is what he's saying in this part. You look at yourself as all of the processes that make up you, and you find out how to break a link of the chain and replace it with something better. So that's the baseline of this internal value chain. So in regards to yourself, not necessarily businesses or processes and businesses, it's really self-explanatory almost. Like, oh, okay, if I were to change the production link because there's this new technology, boom, that would be really, really good. In the research and development thing, holy shit, there's a trend going on YouTube that I could do and I could make my own. Cool, I'm going to do that and do that. Maybe there's a video game coming out and there's a super big need for whatever, or there's people who aren't tagging their videos appropriately for what the problems people are actually searching for. Okay, I could disrupt the marketing link and the distribution link of my value chain, that kind of thing. And if it's a business, it's the same thing, except it's more blown up. Like, oh, I want to make dog food for healthy dog food, essentially. Okay, well then I need to the internal link of how dog food production was being made thus far within every business around me was the development of good dog food was the same. Basically, whatever scraps that they can get, they throw into a dog food, they sell it. It's cheap, it's easy, it's done. This person made a perception, which is what we're going to talk about, which is looking for opportunities or a shift within the environment or ecosystem. So for him, this is a story, by the way, in the book, but this guy basically seen that human beings no longer see their dogs as like another, like an animal. So dogs used to basically be like tied up outside. They used to leave them there, whatever. Now we bring our dogs in the house. We give them food. We love them to bits. We clean them. We wash them, all that kind of stuff. So there's a clear shift within the last couple of 100 or 20 or 30 years where people very much treasure their dogs. So maybe people would be more willing to spend money on better dog food. So he goes and looks at how do you go about making and selling dog food, and he finds out that, okay, if my original perception of I think people would be willing to buy more expensive dog food if it meant their dogs would be healthier and happier, then they might do that. So he goes out and he basically finds out that it would cost significantly more to produce high quality dog food for dogs, and instead of saying, well, fuck it, everyone else is not doing this, I'm not going to do it, he says, no, I am going to I think my perception of capturing value because of this changing perception of dogs is that. So then he goes about actually doing that. He holds true to the course and says, okay, I'm going to make expensive dog food, which I'm worried that people won't buy, but if some people do care about their dogs more and it's not that much more expensive, then my business will succeed. And lo and behold, his business succeeds. People wanted, high quality dog food for their dogs. People who had the excess of income could understand and say, okay, sure, I'm going to actually give my dog this food and maybe even give them a longer life. All those things, less medical bills later down the line because I'm actually feeding them good stuff. Those kinds of things. So that's an example of like seeing an internal value chain, seeing a potential for, okay, I think there's a changing within the human beings who I think they would be willing to pay more money for dog food if it was actually better for them, disrupt that link of production, and now you have access, and the person sold his business for like a lot of money, basically, later down the line after he was already really successful because his perception was correct. And that's just how it would work in a business. But in the context of yourself, it is key to a disruptor's mindset to honestly assess your internal value chain, to overcome every obstacle in the way, annihilate all assumptions that put limitations on your dreams or expectations of yourself. Question what you have been told were strengths and weaknesses. Train yourself to think differently. If you want change, you're the one that's got to change. So he basically says, go through your internal value chain, and you guys might be saying, well, wait, what is that? How do I do that? And he kind of goes into, and I think it's kind of connected to your disruptor's map is what he calls it, which is the other thing that I found very, very helpful. But I'm probably going to have to start skipping things a little bit because we're running out of time. But the disruptor's map, to map out what you want from your life, what would be meaningful to your life, what you would kind of desire to get out of your life, and what kind of goals you're trying to move towards. And also he talks, this kind of correlated with disrupting your internal value chain, which is a whole sentence, but anyways, it kind of talks about, okay, well, if you know where you're going, you can understand what you need to change within your internal value chain in order to make the journey worthy, or in order for you to actually be able to do the journey. So he kind of correlates, I think, with disrupting your internal value chain directly connected with where you most want to go and why you're going there. So again, for me, it'd be like, okay, well, I would like to have a successful income bracket, essentially be able to have enough money to where I could keep my head above water. I don't think I need $1 bazillion, but I do like building things, so maybe that'd be something that we could work on later down the line. But also in terms of value and thing, I don't need a big ass house. I don't need any of these things. I would like a family one day. Okay, so I need to have enough money to prepare for that. So you map out the things that you want most in life, it seems like, and then you would start saying, okay, now what would now that you have where you would go, you go backwards, and you'd be like, okay, well, I would need to do this. I would need to figure out how to generate value from this. Okay, I would need to know where to go after this, and then you can start seeing where you're gonna start to go and reversing your way backwards, realizing, okay, in order to do this, I need to become these things. And that is in itself disrupting your internal value chain because you're going to need to become something different in order to make the voyage. And I think he has a quote in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Failing to plan is planning to fail. I can't find it, but basically, what he says, like, if you're planning your life, you need to pack for the journey of a lifetime. So, like, if you're planning this overarching big goal that is worth pursuing, there's something that you know is gonna either just give you desire or like some sort of pursuit in life, an ambition, an ideal, or a desire, a want. What do you call it? Whatever it is, you need to prepare for it. It's like when you go on a journey to like Hawaii with nothing, like or Hawaii's a bad example. When you go to a journey in the forest, is better, because sometimes where you're going is going to be hard to survive in. Anyways, would you go there with nothing in your possession, or would you prepare like crazy so that you can increase the chances of your survival, or overall in this context success? So that's kind of the thing he's talking about like when you map out your whole, where you would be going, when you are going to get there, what you would need to do in order to get there, is incredibly helpful. And again, that's something that he kind of talks about, is like, okay, in order to make your disruptors map, you need to know where you're going, what kind of things you value. And he has a whole worksheet about this, by the way. Something I should have talked about at the very beginning. He has work booklets, like worksheets, attached to his self-improvement book, which I think is like almost a necessity at this point. Any self-improvement book that doesn't have worksheets or something that actually force you to answer questions and not just like shut down your actual brain and just listen for 10 minutes without having to actually provide or generate or actually carve a path forward with you, I think is pretty useless. That's why all the books that I like so much do have a shit ton of guides or like worksheets that say, hey, so now that you just learned, it's time to work. It's time to actually show that you're meaningful and you're actually going to do this. Not just that you're like, I listen to this book, chuck it away and you'll never remember it ever. It's like, what? No. So one of the things that correlated when I was reading about this in the chapter, but it's basically like the power of what would be 15 minutes every day, at a minimum. That's it. Or like a person broke down the math of basically of what would happen if you wrote 2 pages of a book every single day, but only 2 pages. Like they could be scuffed, they could be rough, they could be blech, but you just need to write down 2 pages from your book every day. Or you could go back and revise one of the previous 2 pages. But you do that every day you either do 2 pages at a minimum, or you do 10 minutes at a minimum, whichever comes first, say. You do that, but you do that every single day, and a person like did the math of like, okay, how many hours are allotted in your day? It's this many. You could write technically 4 books in one year or something like that. I think it was more. I think it was 6 actually. Anyways, you could write a lot of books within a small amount of time, and also you just choose the ones that were the most interesting to you and then revise it over the same course of maybe half a year or even less than that, because it's just the consolidation of time consistently delivered is way more valuable. And also there's a lot of information that correlates that within your brain about like repetitive actions that branch off and tangle within each other, create a much better neurological circuit within your brain, letting you remember and learn things easier. Anyways, so yeah, just the idea that like 10 minutes every single day can be immensely incredible for your disruptors roadmap, or even just realizing, okay, I would need to go to take classes for this, or maybe there's another way I could do that. Maybe with the age of YouTube and information being online, I could go about learning what I would need in order to get to this place, and do that 10 minutes every day and just chip away at it because maybe you're super busy, whatever it could be, right? Another great quote: the purpose of life is purpose. I would agree with this. The purpose of life is meaning, purpose, whatever you would determine is worth striving for or becoming or working for. But also I like the idea of that because it constantly puts things in perspective of, wait, so when you have attained one purpose or one goal, replace the purpose or goal or else you'll be depressed as shit. Like, what? This is the one that I find interesting. The master appears when the student is ready to learn. It is true only if you make an effort to seek out advice. I don't know about this. I maybe it's just me, but I'm also like a hermit. So probably a problem with the individual, but it's what it is. Yeah. I don't know, man. I really like to learn and I really like to understand things, but I also get like tunnel vision, unfortunately. I get really focused on things and everything else kind of fades away. So I'm pretty bad at that, unfortunately. But I feel like you need to seek out truth, I guess. You can't wait for somebody to appear and that. What you could do is dissolve your ego, and if somebody does look like they could provide you with information or value, then yeah, pursue that person. Don't be like, I know everything. But I do think, I think it's best bet is just to hunt yourself, try to find knowledge, even if you have to read, like listen to 6 podcasts of a bunch of successful people, and you come out of there with 2 tips that may be actually relevant to everybody and not just a person who has a specific individual business venture or position in life. It's still gotta happen. It's like, unless you want to fly down, like it's the cost benefit analysis to getting that person's attention may not be worth it. Maybe actually way too much. Anyway, and this is just like, this is not in the book, but this is kind of what I believe. And after reading a good bit of books at this point about this kind of stuff, I know nothing, but this is my one takeaway that I think is pretty relevant. We'll get back to the book in a minute, but I think it's really important that you try to go beyond your masters, I guess, or go beyond your teachers, or go beyond the information that is provided to you. So what I mean by that is, for instance, I could explain it basically with this. If somebody told you, like as a kid, we were always told, look both ways before you cross the street, or just don't run across the street. If a ball is across the street, don't run after it. Now, if a kid was just like, yes, I won't do that, cool, and then just never does that, they probably would be safer for it. But what if you were a person who said, well, wait, mom and dad, well, why can't I walk across the street? And hopefully your parents were actually good about explaining things to you, and they said, well, there's cars that can come by and hurt you. And then maybe you're like, okay, well, is there a way that I could get across the street safely? And they say, oh yeah, crosswalks. And then like, okay, so the crosswalks, you look both ways, you make sure the person comes to a stop, and then you go through it. Okay, so that was a way to cross the street. I'm not just sitting there like my balls across the street. Yikes. Or maybe you're a young kid and you're like, wait, if I look both ways and I know there's no car coming because it's a long enough road that I can predict that, and then I sprint fast as hell across the street, maybe I could be good. Still not advised, because it's still, it's not good to do that. But still, with more knowledge about understanding why somebody gave you the initial point of information, to go beyond your masters, go beyond your teachers, to actually find out the brevity and the why behind their answer, can have 1,000 other inferences of information, answers, value, all those things. Not only that, but it contributes to the way your brain actually learns, which is to create 1,000 neurons that are all connecting within each other, rather than just the one, don't do this. Don't do that's pretty easy to forget, whereas don't do this because it has impending death, but there's ways to solve it. These are the ways you could go about not getting hurt. These are the ways that you could use it to your advantage. Those all connect back to each other, creating a stronger neurological circuit. So I think it contributes to learning as well. But in the example of this book, where you're basically trying to find opportunities, knowing why you are not supposed to do something could in itself be an opportunity. So it's like kind of like an argument to be inquisitive, I guess, also. But the idea of like, okay, well, what if there was a way to basically cross the road without inhibiting or being in danger of being hit by a vehicle? And you're like, okay, we could put guardrails on roads. All right, sure. But what if there was an opportunity to go underneath the road, specifically within crosswalks, so that way it would improve the travel time to locations, so we could take away crosswalks, but still give people a way to cross the road. And you're like, okay, well, what if instead of a crosswalk, we dug into the ground and popped out the other side, so that the road was not inhibited and drivers could just go all the way through. And we could just teach kids to, if you want to cross the street, you go underneath the goddamn crosswalk, and yeah. Now, one that we're about to talk about, it's probably the most valuable thing that the book gives you, but you need to break your idea. So one of the things that quickly came to my mind when just talking about this random nonsense was like what happens when it rains and that tunnel system fills with water. So there's problems. There's problems, but the point is that I think there's value to be had in understanding or going beyond what someone initially tells you, to go beyond your masters so that you can become even greater, or go beyond them, essentially. Not greater, I think it's rude to say, but yeah. Anyways, just my own nonsense aside, lifetime learning is no longer an ideal, it is a requirement. I agree with this. You have to learn, and learn some more. And I say this as a person who struggled with school more than I could ever describe to you. I was, like, it's one of the things that you cannot hide from that question, even though school may be terrible for you and you might have had a really bad go of it. It doesn't change the fact that you need to understand how to teach yourself, how to learn, how to adapt, and how to solve. And I think school does a poor job at most of those. But regardless, yes, I do think you need to deeply understand how to solve solutions regardless. I think if I could give anybody a gift, it'd be that. It'd be like, just nail down how to solve things, how to actually seek information to a problem, because school, at least to me, never really did a good job about that. It kind of made you like look for very specific things, but not genuinely say, how would I come to solve a problem? Instead, it's like, go to the textbook, go find a specific page, go to it. You find a very specific, streamlined information that's directly answering your specific question, rather than, I have a problem. What are all the ways that I could solve it? What are all the ways that I could solve it that have pitfalls? What are all the ways that remain that don't? Okay, now go forward with that one. School does a bad job at that. Anyways, so yes, a lifetime of learning is important. You're going to need to know how to teach yourself and to how to stay consistent with whatever information you have. Kind of talks to a point that I believe about the self-mastery, which is to become all that you can be, you need to be all for oneself, and to be all for oneself, you can then be all for another. But the idea that you should know how to be the most motivating coach you could ever have, the best teacher, the best student, the best employer, the best businessman, or the best mom, the best dad, especially because one day your parents are going to die, so you should best know how to provide love, nurturing, care, confidence, support to oneself, because that's an inevitability that you're going to have to deal with, that everybody is going to have to deal with. So an argument for self-mastery, essentially, and also to be the best teacher, trainer, student, master you could possibly be. Anyways, whole other video that is. Anyways, there is so much information here, guys. I'm doing my best to just pick out ones that I think are like incredible. So we're honestly we're at our point. I could talk about this book for 4 hours. I could promise you that. But I wanted to kind of summarize, to me, one of the most important, if I could consolidate what this book did for me, which I probably should have done from the beginning. Sorry. But if I could consolidate one of the most important things that I think this book gave to me is yes, the things we talked about prior, but if I could add 2 more things, maybe more, it'd be this. One of the things that the book talks about is this concept of a zombie idea. And I love this, but man, I almost wish I could talk to the guy who wrote it, because I find, and maybe I could talk to you guys about it, but it's let's explain the idea first. But I think you need to be careful because you might get bit. Anyways, so what is a zombie idea in the context of this book? So the person talks about, okay, so the importance of data acquisition. So to not just aim at nothing, but to have an inference and to listen to people and to, again, look at your own problems as opportunities, as data sets, to kind of be like, okay, if I'm having this problem, someone else probably is too. Or if I feel this way, what are the odds that I'm absolutely alone? So data is important. So from that data, you can then start to build an idea that says, okay, well, I want to do X. So after you have an idea of, okay, I think people would value or want this, or with this new technology or situation or environment, I think value could be captured with here, or created and captured here. So now that you have that, now you need to create a zombie idea. So now you have this cool inference of finding this idea that you found based on value creation, listening to other people, looking at the world and trying to find a way to improve the world, improve a system, improve a business, improve an environment, improve whatever. Or solve a problem for someone. There's multiple ways you could look at it. But regardless, you now have at your disposal an idea. How do you make the idea work, though? And this is where I think one of the most important things, because everyone can have an idea. Everyone can just think, what about that? I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be interesting. I think that would get people's attention. I think that would be helpful. I think that would be fun. I think that would be worth doing, whatever. So you have an idea. Now you need to zombify it. So what he says, and he coins this term, which I love a lot, but it's to create a zombie idea. An idea that is unstoppable and unrelenting. So how you do this is you basically write out your idea, and now you find out all of the ways your idea can fail. And then you kill your idea with all the ways that it could fail, and you resurrect it. You kill it, you resurrect it, you kill it, you resurrect it, until it is an unstoppable Frankenstein zombie idea. And the way he kind of breaks this down is, okay, you have an idea, and now you need to go, and I would always suggest writing these things down because you'll just lose stuff within your brain. So write things down. I have an idea. What are the ways that it could fail? So then you type out, okay, it could fail because people could lose interest. So for me, what I type in is, I have an idea for a video that could be helpful. It could be a guide showing people how to do something. So then I do that, and I think, okay, what are the ways that it could fail? Right off the cuff. People could lose interest. So then you're like, okay, what's the solution to that failure point? I could be quick, I could not waste people's time, and I could re-engage them with edits and stuff like that. But mostly if I just keep a good pace, I don't like dilly-dally around the solution, I could give people the answer that they want and have them move along their way. Cool, so that's a way that it could have failed, and now we've now patched or reinforced that point so that it doesn't happen or has a lower chance of happening. Okay, I wanted to make this guide. What are things that actually make it so that people enjoy a piece of content? Okay, well, if you can make someone laugh or chuckle, or maybe even just be a little bit more of a personality as you're trying to help them along their way, then the odds of them having a greater experience with you is increased. Okay, so that would increase the overall value of the idea. Okay, perfect. Also show you how to avoid certain things. So to not be overbearing, to not be super loud or goofy, to the point in which it's destructive to what you're originally trying to do, which is just quickly give this person a solution to their problem, then that could help that. So you continue to go through all of the what he calls them is, he explains them as roads. So you're going down roads, and there's a certain amount of roadkill on the roads that would be really hard to avoid or straight up inhibit you. So either you find a way to avoid the roadkill, or you find a path that has the least amount of roadkill possible, which I think is what he kind of says. So in order to create a zombie idea, you should think about all the ways your idea can come into fruition, and try to imagine going down all of the roads, considering the things that would inhibit you or that would contribute to its success or failure, and then pick the one that has the least amount of bullshit that you need to patch, fix, or adjust, or etc. And then pick whatever road you have and try to kill it, because there's other contributing things that could kill your idea. There could be the market, there could be the environment, there could be timing, there could be the individuals that are interacting with your content. There could be so many variables that could interact with your idea. Find a way to patch, reinforce, or avoid all of the potential pitfalls. And maybe you can't completely avoid it, but you certainly can make it at the very least a zombie, and on the very high end, maybe even Frankenstein that's functionally unkillable. At least that's my mentality of Frankenstein. But the idea is that you're trying to find the way your idea can fail, and then finding it, patching it, reinforcing it, and this kind of contributes to my overall thought of success. But success is just a game of chance. All life is a game of chance, frankly. But that doesn't mean that everything is meaningless and we're all fucked. It just means that you need to find a way to increase your percentage chance for success. So find a better way to flip the coin. Leverage every single advantage you can on flipping the coin. And eventually, you'll get to the point where you now have a much better chance than 50-50, I guess, based on things that you've done and information that you've learned. Now, what's the problem with this? Why was I I love this. I love this idea. I found tremendous help in it. The reason why I have a little bit of abrasion to this zombie idea thing is because I came from a place where I was super, super critical, to the point in which I wasn't even helpful. I was just it was almost like masochistic. I think other people are like that too, especially with my generation, where we grew up with social media a little bit. You're self-criticizing, overly self-analytical, and you just rip apart everything that you have. So it becomes really punishing, the idea of this. So I could really easily see how somebody in the pursuit to make their idea a zombie idea, how do I put it? Just destroy their idea and destroy themselves. Say this wouldn't work because this sucks, this would fail because of this. And I could see people just ripping themselves apart and letting their idea bite their throat out, destroying their interest and desire to actually create this thing. You have an idea, and your idea actually diminishes you as an individual, as a person, because you lose self-worth because you end up thinking about how like all of this is meaningless because there's no way it could succeed. And all I would say is, to me, what would help me, because I was really worried that this would be a process of it, is two things. First thing, I would never just put this with, how can my idea fail? I would always put it with this one, which is, in what way can I improve my idea? And then in what way can my idea fail? Because I think both lenses are valuable. And then the other thing is, I would say, never let your idea's failure point go without an equal sign that tells you a solution that could help you avoid it, or at least contribute into it being less potent or deadly. So if like, oh, people could lose interest or get bored within the video because of whatever reason, that's a point of failure. Instead of just saying they could lose interest, what do you call it? Maybe they're not actually looking for this video. And then you just write all this stuff, and then at the end of it, you're like destroyed because you're like, oh, this is a bad idea. I can't get a good idea to save my life. Instead, to be like, okay, they could lose interest. What are the ways I could maintain their attention and interest? This. Just come up with whatever comes to your mind, and never leave the like just sea of despair of like failure. Also, I find it's more beneficial to have two lenses to look at your idea from. The idea of, okay, how could this fail? This. Okay, say if I did have my idea and I brought it into the real world and it was out there in the real world, what would be the ways I could improve it? Even without it being in the real world, you're just imagining if it was there. Be like, oh, well, I could have added this. I could see that, because it's kind of a similar idea of like the mindset of like a failure point. Well, this could be its equal counterpoint of an improvement point of something that could just make it overall better. But it is also important to recognize the variables that your idea or product is going to interact with. So that is something that I found incredibly useful for the entirety of the book, is the idea of creating a zombie or Frankenstein idea, and just to basically map out the ways your idea could fail and the ways your idea could succeed. And also, just as a friendly thing, it is going to be a slow process at the start where like, holy shit, I'm going to have an idea and then I'm going to have to like do all this work to try to find a way that it could fail on stuff. That sounds like it's going to take like another 20 minutes whenever I'm just coming up with an idea. I need to come up with a lot of ideas, especially for like me, who's in the business of like creating content every day. I will say it gets exponentially faster as everything that you do as you do it. So you start off like, yeah, this is slow, I don't even know how it could fail, but then a lot of things are resonating with each other. So the ways this could fail are a lot of times the way everything else could fail. But we've come up with solutions on how to patch those, which also apply to the other things. So it becomes easier, and you kind of create a web of information on how to account for certain things and also just improve things on a base, so that regardless of what you create, they have these baseline things that just make the process better, more interesting, more engaging, and flourish and succeed more just by increasing the percentage chance that they have to succeed. Anyways, but yes, that was really good. There was one more that I wanted to talk your ear off about. Value chain is incredibly important. The zombie idea is incredibly important. The research and development is incredible and insightful, and all of these things. So basically, he goes down the rest of the book, by the way. He goes down the processes of disrupting each one of the value chains that are in most business situations, which is like research and development, product design, and production. Marketing and all of those things, and then distribution. So he goes through all of those things and gives you examples of how each person disrupted this chain in the link of the value chain of business processes, essentially. That was the other thing that I thought was, and it's man, so many of these are extrapolations of like so many chapters contributing to this idea. So over the course, he doesn't just say, here's what value creation and capturing is. He kind of, over the course of like, he kind of sets like seeds almost that eventually flourish into a connecting web of information. So one of the things he keeps bringing up in the whole thing is a value chain, but he also talks about value creation and value capturing, which is a really interesting idea of how you break things down. But the idea is simply as disruption in itself is trying to disrupt an environment so that you can basically capture the value there, or create value from that environment entirely, aka disruption, using a new technology to upend business structures to where there's even a greater sense of need, demand being sated, and therefore now you are the one that people are coming towards that, and you've created value, which is awesome. Or you've completely upended the system, but they're separated. So creating value, which is like coming up with value, disrupting an environment and giving something to the environment, and capturing it is different. So the person that built the internet, people who built the internet and brought all that to life, weren't the same people who were able to capture the value from that. In fact, a lot of like Google was the one who found out, like, okay, there was a disruption that shaped created a ton of opportunity, a ton of value, but the people who made it weren't the people who captured the most value from that. It was the people who were in it and were able to solve the problems needed by the market, brought on by this new environment. So Google is a great example. Apple is a great example. Amazon, weirdly enough, is also an example of people who basically captured the most value from what was created by disruption. And in some cases, they literally created disruption itself. What's a good example of that? I can't think of. I know there's like 1,000 in here, but yeah. But let's stay on the thread of creating and capturing value. So, creating value to me is what we just went through, essentially, of like look at an internal value chain, the process of how you do things, and then find the most valuable link in the chain that you could break and replace with something better, stronger, more efficient. Maybe it's inhibited by, engaged by a new technology that's emerged, so that makes the process much better. Again, this was the example in the book was basically oil cans were made of steel and were clunky and were messy, but this was done way after the fact that plastic bottles were readily available. So the person just came up with an idea. Well, wait, what if I just take plastic bottles and I just put oil in them so that they're easier to handle, they're easier to hold. You can tie like a cap on it really easily. You can also see the liquid and how much you have in the container. So it's just all value all around. And just like that, the person was able to disrupt the creation of the product, which made his infinitely more valuable. And despite companies who have reinvested tons and tons of money into making oil cans, they got like basically replaced overnight. And that's the thing that he also talks about in the book is you shouldn't bet on a safe investment for your future, because like we've already talked about, disruption is abound everywhere, and there's very few companies that are able to survive past that point, because an innovative technology can come out and displace the whole environment. With that being said, though, companies are getting shitty and they're actually buying up new innovative technologies just so that they can keep and then shelving them just so they can keep everything the way it is. Anyways, but he talks about the only thing that a business could do or a person could do that is valuable is to bet on your ability to adapt to the changing times, aka learn faster than your competition. Learn and adapt faster than your competition. There's also another great example in the book where he talks about how companies, the reason why they fail to the startup is because companies always look at the other big dinosaur that's trying to rip out their throat more than the tiny human beings that are able to go get like an ion cannon and shoot their neck off, essentially. It's a whole thing in the book. It basically talks about how big businesses are looking at other big businesses and fighting for like the domination of the market. But in reality, it's the internet being created. It's the tiny startup like Facebook that's upending all of the other social media platforms, like what is it, AIM or so, like other not AIM, but other like social media companies that came before Facebook was a thing. But Facebook was able to capture the most value from the generation, and the other companies were like fighting against other titans of industry, not Facebook, despite Facebook is the person that was the one that was truly their end. And it's just kind of a point of big businesses always look at other big businesses as their main competitor and not the startup that's willing to try and do anything to capture and find disruption or a value point or an innovation that or applying a value to a market or something like that, right? And he talks about the idea like that he had an experience where and again, a lot of the book's value is going through his life stories, essentially, of like, oh, okay, I see how like you could get this point from it. So here's an example of creating and capturing value. So in this story, Jay Smith basically had a company where he made like tutorial infotainment kind of videos for businesses. So basically, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's seen that there was basically a giant need for something that they could provide as an information company. So he's seen that in the businesses of truck drivers driving to and from locations, that there was a lot of like casualties slash accidents. So he said, oh shit, they're losing a ton of money from these accidents happening. We could make an information video about how to be a good driver, essentially, as a trucker, how to do evasive maneuvers so that you wouldn't, get in accidents, how you could handle things better. We can make an information video series about that and give it to them. So I think he went up to them and asked them, like, hey, could I make this series for you? They said yes, so they commissioned him, and he made it. But the thing that they didn't expect, and that he didn't expect, I think, is that he was able to drop their accident-prone thing by, like, I think 50%. So they spent, like, I think it was like $1,000, I don't know, it was like 30,000 something for this information kind of guide video back in the day. And its effect was them, like, just destroying their accident proneness, which they spent millions and millions of dollars dealing with every single year. So needless to say, Jay Samit created an incredible amount of value for the company, but only got paid $30K or something like that. It's just an amount of money that maybe would be seen as not that much given the problem that he solved. So he solved a problem that was way, way more expensive. Anyways, so this was one of the leading delivery truck driver kind of things in the country, essentially. And he was in a rough spot because he was like, shit, I didn't think I would be able to, like, no one knew that it was going to create this much of a thing. Like, these maneuvers and all this stuff would cause this much of a lessening in their truck drivers having accidents. So, one of the things he talks about is, like, I can't, like, go to them and be like, hey, like, you need to pay me more, because they're like, we're a business. We paid for what you accepted, and now you're wanting us to pay even more, even though you have helped us. It's just not something the business will do, especially when it doesn't provide them any value, which is one of the other pieces of gold in this, which I would be remiss if I didn't talk about. But it's a lot of, like, you should look at how much value you can generate for the business that you're trying to work with, and how much value your product can give them, rather than I need to get mine. Because that's not how business works. Not how good business works, at least. Anyways, so in order for him to kind of adapt to what he just did, which he created a shit ton of value, but he didn't capture a lot of it. So in order to capture it, he went back to the drawing board and seen it as an opportunity. So he said, okay, well, what if I go to them and I ask them if they could license me the tutorial that I made for them, and use their logo, because they're a predominant truck driving kind of thing, like transportation business. What if I took that and I brought it to other businesses, and I gave you a piece of the commission of me selling this thing to them? So this piece of information, what if I went and I gave it to other businesses that were in the similar transportation kind of thing, that were not even in your kind of capital area, but also even if they were, you're still gaining money from them. And then he said, okay, yeah, cool, because they're gaining money from a product that is otherwise just sitting there, providing them with less damage. But now it's out there being used by other companies, and also Jay Samit is now capturing more of the value that he created. Does that make sense? Which I think is wicked. Like, the idea that, like, when I was hearing him listen to this story, I was like, oh, that must have hurt like shit. If only like you knew, oh, I was gonna be able to completely reduce the millions and millions of dollars that was being spent on broken ass cars because people were rear-ending shit. But instead he was like, wait, don't look at anything like it's a failure. Look at it as like a potential opportunity. So he's like, okay, how can I capture more value from the value which is already being created, even if it wasn't by me? Okay, well, I could license their work, my work, that they own, to other companies, taking a percentage of what that is, and they also get a percentage. So it's a win-win for both people. And again, there's one more thing I would like to point out, even though there's so many more things in the book, but I've already taken too much of your time. One of the things that they talk about in the book, which I think is incredible, is the thing of, like, working with anybody. Good business, I believe, is trying to create value for the other party, and then also having the confidence and understanding about how you can gain value yourself as well. But it should always start with, what can I provide value, or how can I provide value to the thing that I'm trying to work with, the person that I'm trying to work with, the product that I'm trying to sell with. If you're trying to sell something to your community, audience, whatever, you should be looking at what they most want, what they could most use, not how you could gain and how you could just like nickel and dime every little cent from them, because that's just bad business. No one's going to want to work with you. And one of the things he pointed out, which I always thought was interesting, is I've always heard the argument of like, you should never give up any piece of your business because it's terrible, like it's just like the worst. And I agree with some of that, but he talks about how so say if your idea, your like grant, because sometimes your idea goes way bigger than just, you know, something that you can do on YouTube. It's like this big business. You're trying to create a clothing line or something. So then you go to someone and say, hey, I want to start a clothing line or whatever, and they say, okay, we want like you know, a crazy amount of stuff. So then maybe they ask for like 50% of the business that they're going to help fund and pursue with you. And you're like, oh shit, that's not good enough. I want 100% of this business. Well, if you need, he makes a good point, Jay Smith makes a good point to say, if you need them in order for your idea to succeed, it's as simple as this. 100% of nothing is nothing. 50% of something is something. And then he also makes the point of, if these people genuinely try to make your business succeed, flourish, and etc., then the question becomes, would you rather own 100% of a tiny lake or a pond, or would you rather have 50% of the Pacific Ocean, like a huge sum of money? And of course, I think this is played by year of like how much money you're expecting to gain from income-wise and etc. But it does speak to a point of, and this is something he talks about in stories within the book, that it is incredibly important for the person you're working with in business to have an incentive structure to want your idea or business to succeed. And if they feel like they're getting slighted and or not anything back from the business, then there's a high chance that they won't even bet on it. They won't even invest in it, They won't even try to make it succeed. Whereas if you position them to gain a lot from its success, then you can then they'll provide more effort and try harder to make it succeed themselves because they have a lot to gain. Whereas if a person doesn't have a lot to gain from its success, then there's not a lot there. And I think that's the problem. I think a lot of businesses and maybe startups happen where they basically work with someone, but they make it so not lucrative for the business that the business that they're trying to capture the brand, the value from, isn't being funneled back into their idea because the business has nothing to gain from its success. So they're like, you have the most gain, you're going to have to work the hardest. And we'll just cash in like a freebie give, essentially, which is usually not how it works. Usually, and this is my perception of it, it seems like you probably have to work with a company or a business asking for like like 5% of whatever you're trying to fund that would be valuable to them as well. And then as you prove yourself and you prove that, okay, I have generated the thing that I said that would generate value has created this much value, I can do what I just did again, but beforehand where I took this piece, now that I've shown you that I can generate that much value for you, I want this much. Not enough to where, like, again, you're the one making out bank and the business is like shitting the bed, they're not getting anything out of it. You still, I think, always want to have it like 30-40 to them, given they're doing a lot of work, essentially, than the other way around. That way there's incentive for them to actually make your idea flourish. But after you've already proven that you can provide value to the company, whether it's an idea, whether it's an IP, whether it's marketing, whatever, then you can say, okay, here's the value I'm providing you. This is the percentage of value that I think I deserve because beforehand this is what wasn't happening. Like this is the value that when I came on board, this happened. I want a chunk of that so that I can stay here. Otherwise, I'll take these findings to another company who would understand that difference, I guess, or that value created by you. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much more to talk about in this book. Like, it is insane how much we could ramble about the wonderfulness of this whole book. There's crazy amounts of value in it. I didn't do it justice by talking about certain things, but if there's anything that I could really think that would be good for you to take away for this book, it's this. The zombie ideas thing is incredible. I think that is very, very good. I'll just say be careful with it's the line, when creating Frankenstein, you need to be careful that he doesn't kill you, which is to say, when trying to destroy your ideas, make sure that you don't destroy yourself in the process. You're trying to aim at how you can succeed, not all the ways you can fail and it's not worth doing. You want to make sure you understand and account for failure so that you can avoid it, and you find ways to improve your idea, but just don't destroy yourself. The second thing is there's a lot of value to understand from disruption itself, the idea of there being this piece of technology, this rival company that or not even rival company, this completely different company that solved a problem that you could otherwise take into a separate, different venture, business idea, and implement the very same thing that they used, this evolution in technology, this idea, this system, and make this new thing work way better. It could also be a similar environment, similar business that you find has a similar adjacent thing. It's kind of really prevalent on YouTube, where you could take something that worked from this video game similar, plug it in, and it works just as well. Anyways, the other thing, disruption is very, very, very good to understand. Essentially, the idea of technology, or just keeping your eyes on something that is opportunity abound. There's opportunity around everything. Don't look at anything like it's just a complete kick in the dick. Instead, look at it like it's an opportunity that you can maximize and use to your advantage. And I think that's a great mindset to have. Being the silver lining business is what J. Smith says. Samit says. Not the last thing, but the other thing is creating and capturing value is what your goal should be. Creating value is usually found by stating a need, finding out what the environment most wants, implementing a better system on how to do things, accounting for the variables that maybe other businesses aren't. All of those things. Capturing value is also positioning yourself in a way that it's kind of like business, I think. I think capturing value is way more about how can I position myself in a way that it's a win for me and ideally a win for somebody else. The idea of business about being a win-win. How can I provide value to them, and how can I capture the value that I'm generating, essentially. Anyways, and then the last thing is the name of the book, Disrupt You. To actually look at yourself as if you were as if you were a link in chains made up of 1,000 different links in a chain, and to map out where you most want to be when you are planning on getting there, and then reverse engineering what you would need to change within your internal value chain to be the person that could get to that location. What would you need to do? How would you need to do it? At what speed would you need to progress? What are all the items that you need to get to where you want to be? All of those things. So yes, that's essentially the book, and I would highly advise you reading it. It is quite good. I will say, to me, I felt like the beginning was like the first 4 chapters are very, very good. When it starts talking about like the zombie ideas and whatnot, that's when things start becoming really, really interesting, at least for me. And that's when I started being like, holy shit, okay, here we go. Here we go. Yeah, anyways, so I really like the book. Hope you guys, if you are into this kind of thing, business, self-improvement, that kind of thing, that you might give it a try. Talk to me about anything and everything that happened and that we talked about within the book. I'm really curious about what you guys think about some of the ideas. This always happens. I spent like probably, by the way, like maybe a month and a half actually reading the book, because I make notes and I review notes 3 times, whole ordeal. But I try to cement information that I find is worth remembering. So having spent so much time looking into and like reviewing the book, I have 1,000 things to say, and I have not a lick of time to say it. And I regret that a little bit. But alas, I've already taken too much of your time. I appreciate any of you guys. I would suggest the book immensely, especially if you're into the self-improvement and you're planning on going into business, or just better want to understand how you could move up a corporate ladder, or just understand what kind of value you could provide to people that would make you valuable, and all those things. And also to look at yourself as if you are a person that's trying to achieve grander goals, and how you would best go about doing those. I really like the book. I would highly suggest you guys go check it out if you want. I did want to read the book that he made after the fact, or after this one, the one that's about like the homeless man being a millionaire or something like that within a year's time. But one of the things he talks about in the book is find out where you want to be and then go backwards and find out all the things that you would need to learn in order to get closer to attaining those goals, or in order to increase the chance of you succeeding. And I think I need to read a book before I read that one, because it's more prevalent to what I'm about to go embark on. So, and I might tell you guys about that one, I might not. Anyways, I will see. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. Let me know what you guys think if you have read the book, or what you think about what I've talked about recently within this video. Thank you so much, and goodbye, my friends. Also, we make a lot of videos on the channel that is not this. Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully you enjoy your rest of your day, and goodbye.